Kia ora koutou, morena. Welcome everybody to this committee, which has the longest name and the shortest agenda, and the most exclusive membership this morning as well. Michael will be back in a tick, I'm sure. There he is. Welcome Natalie, zooming in. Natalie from Versus, who is here for agenda item 7.1. Welcome to the COM staff, Eleanor, Lisa, Asama, thank you for being here. And good to see you, Richard, at the end of the table. Public forum doesn't exist today. Apologies, a bit lengthy. Kate, Gary, Marion and Brian, all apologies. We're not sure yet about Gretchen, but we know she wasn't too flash yesterday, so we'll just keep our fingers crossed that Gretchen's okay.
Leave that for you?
Yeah, please do, Carmen. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Carmen for that we adopt, and Andrew seconded. Any discussion? In favour, aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you very much.
My apologies, nothing personal. I was just not hearing you very well. It's quite noisy coming through the window.
Okay, is my mic on? Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
I'll just pull it a bit closer anyway.
Nothing personal.
Hillary, I hope you're feeling okay, because our driver from last night has gone down with the flu, and that little vehicle we were in was probably riddled with viruses.
Oh, bugger.
Yeah.
You come sit by me.
Yeah.
I'm fine at the moment.
Good, so
I think.
Brian. Confirmation of the agenda. I have heard nothing about any additional papers to be discussed, so we'll confirm the agenda. You know about conflict of interest. It's highly unlikely anybody will have, but if you do, please declare it. The minutes of the 10th of February are there for us to scrutinise and confirm, if we're of so mind. Anybody who's read those minutes wouldn't care to move that they be adopted. Thanks, Carmen. Seconded, Hillary. Discussion? All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Outstanding actions. This is item 6 on page 6. There is the significance engagement in a Māori participation policy. Richard, you've got an explanation for us as to why that is a bit stuck at the moment. Can you just tell us what that is?
I can, thanks, Michael. So the document we're working currently with Okaha on their design and input into the material. So that's ongoing. And the other issue was, and this was an oversight by me in the initial resolution, is that the delegation to approve a special consultative procedure sits with strategy and planning or council. So we'll need to bring it back to one of those future meetings to approve that consultation. So we're anticipating strategy and planning on the 7th of July. We'll be ready to bring that document back to seek approval for consultation.
It seems a long way off. Is there a problem with that period of delay? It can't go.
It's one of the issues is how full the meetings are coming up. So we could look at whether there's an opportunity to bring it sooner. But again, in terms of the timeframes and the ability to have the document approved so it can be adopted through a future plan process, provided we're obviously not going to do it through the long-term plan where the existing significance and engagement document will be approved. So we can make sure that we have that done in time for next year's cycle. So look, that's the current date. If we have an opportunity to bring it through sooner, we could try.
Cool, that's very good. Does Okaha have any issues with it you're aware of?
No, they're very positive about it. It's just making sure we get the right level of input on translations and some other text and images.
Okay, thanks for that update, Richard. Does anybody else want to comment or question on that issue? Okay, Gretchen, very good to see you.
Okay.
You okay?
Yes, thank you.
Brilliant. We're all a bit concerned about you, and it's very good that you're here. Moving on to item 7.1, which is to do with the Community Survey Implementation Plan. Paper there from Eleanor and Richard, and Natalie, this is where you come in, so it's very good to have you there with us representing Versus. You'll notice the recommendations there suggesting what we should decide to do if we're so minded. The paper's open for discussion. Who would like to lead off? Richard, go for it.
So just very brief, and then obviously open up for questions. So as you've pointed out, Michael, we're presenting a final proposal that we're seeking approval to then commence this project proper. It's obviously been a reasonably long time in discussion, sort of going back to September last year. Natalie and her team at Versus have been providing some excellent advice for us, so very pleased to have her here again today to answer questions around the implementation plan. The last time we talked about this, there was some discussion around a previous ORC survey, which we went away and had a look at. So there was one carried out in 2014, which surveyed 900 residents. We're treating this as a new project, so we won't be benchmarking against that. It was a different type of survey. While it had some similar objectives, it doesn't align with what we've done here. So we can circulate that again for people that may not have been here and may be interested just to see.
I think that's a good idea, because even some of us who were here have no distinct memory.
We did go away and have a look at that, but I guess we are treating this as a fresh start in terms of this and a commitment to do it on an ongoing basis. So that we'll circulate that for everyone to have a look at after the meeting. Just a couple of points within the report. Following the discussion last time, where there was a lot of discussion centering around the number of participants we were seeking to survey in this, and ensuring that we had good representation, particularly across the TLA areas when we look at these results. For that reason, you'll note that we have made a recommendation that doesn't align with the recommendation by Versus. So we've recommended going for 1,700, which gives us a higher number of a higher sample size within each TLA area. Appreciate that's not what's in the proposal that's been put forward, and it may be that we can flesh that out with Natalie. But I think as staff, we felt we got a very clear message at the last meeting that you were seeking a larger sample size to give us a really good breakdown at that TLA level. So that's an explanation for why it's unusual for us to recommend something that our expert advisors have recommended something different, but that's why we've done that in this case. And also just confirming that we are subject to your approval of the proposal. We are committing to this for 3 years, and that will obviously include a report back and an evaluation at the end of each year. Starting later this year will be the first survey, and then at the end of 2023, which will be the third survey in the cycle, there'll be the chance to evaluate the effectiveness and make a decision about whether we continue past that point. So
that's excellent. Thank you.
Happy to move to questions.
Two things from me. One, the cost at 57 plus a bit. That's all okay in terms of budget and LTP for the next 3 years?
So that's in the draft LTP budgets currently.
Yep. The other thing I'd like to do is to hear from Natalie about your reaction, Natalie, to the staff recommendation that we go for the sample size of 1,700, considering that was not your first preference. How do you feel about it, Natalie?
I'm comfortable with it. I think generally at a regional level, the 1,200 is fine, but when we did have that last workshop, there was quite strong preference for being able to understand the TLA areas, and this does give you a lot more. My reservation, I guess, is when I recommend things, it's always looking at budget and costs, especially when you're working in local government, and it does add considerable cost in terms of the telephone interviewing. But that has to be balanced out internally with the ability to understand the smaller areas. So I'm fine with that recommendation.
Thank you. That's very good. And I had Michael and I had Hillary.
I've never, ever heard in my entire year as in local government a consultant worried about local government spending money. Here you go. Listen,
I've got on you.
Yeah. I just want to move I'll move the report. Listen, this is exactly what we wanted. Staff picked it up. Well done. Let's go.
Yep. Did you want a second, Hillary?
Happy to second.
Yep.
I just had a question too.
Yeah, please, go for it. Yep.
Just a question of timing, because I'm thinking that we do it for 3 years and has an opportunity, obviously, to alter our thinking on things, since it's good feedback from the community.
That's the whole point of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the point of that is that sometimes of year would feed into our planning processes differently than other times of year, just so as that there's no point getting something from the people that gives us some feedback when we've just finished our processes.
An LTP,
So
an annual
I'm just
plan.
sort of wanting to ask the staff whether the time of year feeds in properly to our processes to give them,
That's a really good question. Richard, what do you think?
I guess the planning process for annual plans and long-term plans starts in that pre-Christmas period, and then builds up to the bulk of work being early in the new year. So our feeling is the recommendation to go between August and October with a delivery of outputs later in October works well with that cycle. That'll inform that early planning and give us that package of results.
That's all.
So that
we need.
it certainly works well in terms of that planning cycle.
Livestock farmers will tell us that's lambing and calving time and they're too busy.
Cell phones.
Andrew.
They need easy care sheep and cattle, I would suggest. They are out there somewhere. I just had a question around the pilot. What does the pilot actually look like? Is it just a mini survey?
Natalie, I might refer that one to you.
Yep. So what we do is we set it up and you run it as you would normally. A really important, so you'll do some telephone interviews and you will also do some online interviews. It's an important part in making sure that the questions you're asking are understood and being responded in a way that it's consistent. If you've got enough answer options, or if people aren't understanding it, then that's a real quick, it's a problem. You don't want to collect 1,700 interviews and then realise that at the end. So what we do is we do around 50 interviews and we look at those and we come back and we say, look, maybe this question isn't working, or you need a little bit more information around this question. It's not giving us what we need, or have you considered this? So it should all go fine, but it's a valuable stage to have just to make sure before you launch into getting a whole bunch of other results.
Thanks, Natalie.
Thank you. Now, I've got the motion moved and seconded. Any further comments or questions? Carmen.
Thank you. This is a question I'm thinking about differently. What if I'm thinking of areas like Catlins and Awaka, places like that we spend a lot of time with in our areas, in our wards. What if you're wanting them to, or they want to voluntarily tell you something? Are you going to have any other way where it's not just a phone call and it's not an online survey, but there's an opportunity? For example, would they find some sort of information in their centre or their library or the Foursquare down there that says, actually, we'd love to hear from you? Would you look at that kind of situation, or you just wanting to do your online and your ringing as opposed to somebody actually saying, actually, I'd like to tell you what I think? I know it's probably I suppose
it's a different it's a different thing to what we're trying to deliver here in terms of a community survey which has a defined scope as set out in here. I think what you're talking about is the ability for the council to enable people to engage at any point, and that they have a forum to do that. It's not this.
No, I'm sorry, I didn't make myself clear. I'm just wanting to know, if somebody said to me, I hear there's a survey and I'd really like to take part in it.
Yeah.
That's what I'm meaning.
Right, sorry, I've got you. So no, the survey selection is, and Natalie, you can probably talk to this a little bit better than I can, but this is a survey where we will identify the participants. Okay. So it's as opposed to putting a link up in a library or on Facebook that says we're doing a survey. If you would like to, please fill that in. So I don't know, Natalie, if you just want to talk a little bit to
Natalie,
that,
the issue
that process.
here is sparsely populated remote parts of our region that Carmen has quite rightly said are sometimes difficult for us to engage with. If those people wanted particularly to be involved in this survey, is there anything they can do or you can do?
So that there's two questions here. So I'll talk to the bit that Richard was talking about first, and then that second bit about reaching people in remote areas. The first bit about the selection is this, we want to preserve an element of randomness. So while we still want to include as many as possible, it has to be a random selection, because otherwise you start to introduce bias. And we wanted, one of the big mandates of this was to be able to reach people that, everyone, or breadth. There is a component in here. We are leading with online, and then there is telephone interviewing. There is also an element where I know that, and I think it might have been you, Carmen, that I was speaking to, that there are some very particularly small areas. What we will do is, once we have completed the majority of the online and telephone interviewing, there was an element in here where we were going to look at some of those very remote areas and send out a random selection of postal invitations. So this isn't going to go to every single person in the region. No. This is some very targeted stuff to try and reach those particular audiences. And I think that is probably what you're talking about. It's not going to go, okay, we're going to send it to every single person in the Catlins though. We will again preserve that randomness and select that.
Yeah, thanks. That's a good answer. Carmen, are you happy?
I am. I just was worried that, say, it was 1,700 and through no fault of anybody's, you couldn't fulfill it. And I just thought, I read it and thought, actually, would you be open to, or could you do this, or so thank you for the chance.
I don't imagine that postal component will be really significant. We've tried to minimise that, but it is something that we've built in case for those particular areas.
Thank you.
Thanks, Natalie. All right, back to the recommendation. Unless there's any other discussion, just a reminder of what they're asking us to commit to. 1, receive the report. 2, agree to a sample size of 1,700. Note that it will be delivered annually for 3 years, and that August through October will be the seasonality of when that happens over that 3 years. Everybody happy? I'll put the motion. Those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against? Thank you very much. And a special thanks to you, Michael, for leading the charge on this issue. And we've made a good step forward today. Thank you. On to the next item, which is the Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act data, and that's on page 36. If you can just flick through to that. There we are, item 7.2. And this is a report. Welcome, Peter. Very good to see you. A report that Peter Kelleher, Legal Counsel, has prepared. And what we're being asked to do is to receive the report. Peter, go for it. If you'd like to make any comments or explanations about your report, we'd be keen to hear them.
Thank you. Staff originally report to Council on the of information requests to respond to, and those requests to do that basis. The purpose is just to give you a little more information about the types of requests we receive, the Council's processing time, and the extension of time limits. Just to give, I guess, a comparison for future years. The key parts in the report, requests for that's up about 10% from last year. Our average response time is 10.53 working days for requests that are processed within 20 working days. We did receive advice that 2 complaints have been raised to the Ombudsman. We were advised one of those complaints was received, and the other complaints we need to receive information on, apart from knowing that it was in regards to partial redacting. It's why we do all we can to avoid complaints. Sometimes it's very hard to avoid where we get a situation where one party wants information released and another party wants information withheld, no matter which decision the Council makes.
That mic was misbehaving yesterday too, Peter. It's just flickering on.
Light. Oh.
Yeah.
Is that better?
It's got a dodgy
I think
wire.
it is going, but it's just...
There's a wee light there. Smidgy.
Okay. There we are.
Yeah.
Well done, Amanda.
So we do get situations where there'll be competing interests, where one party wants information released and one party wants information withheld, no matter what decision council makes, sometimes a complaint does arise from that. And the final part in the paper I'd like to point out is our proactive release. We've now created a section on our website for the proactive release of information. We intend to use that for when we receive multiple requests for information rather than responding to everyone individually. We intend to put it on the website and refer those requested to that website. Given the fact that there are a number of requests, we consider there is some public interest in that information being available.
A very good idea. Thanks, Peter. Any questions of Peter or of his report? Hilary.
Mine isn't so much a question. I just want to say that this is a very good paper and tells us not only exactly what you're doing, but gives a lot of comfort that what you're doing is what we ought to be doing. So I just think it's excellent, and the whole idea of this area of the law is to allow open, transparent stuff happening, and you're showing that you understand that and you're doing it on our behalf, and we can only be pleased.
Thank you.
Yeah. Andrew.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. My query was just around, and I understand this is part of it's democracy, and we've got no obligation other than to follow the law. I just wondered, from a financial point of view, the 140 odd requests for the legal team, what does that sort of calculate in terms of a full-time equivalent? Is that someone or two people full-time on this role, or is it something a lot less than that?
It's difficult to quantify because it is shared amongst staff, and it really depends on the year. We do have some years where there'll be less requests, but the time demands are higher, given the nature or size of the requests. I would comfortably say it's at least one full-time. Council follows the Ombudsman's guidelines in terms of charging. So the first hour of information is free, and that covers 99% of our requests. For those requests that can take days, if not weeks, we normally prepare an estimate of costs for the requester and then proceed if they're happy to pay those costs. So we do get some money back on the really big requests, but that is a very, very small percentage.
Chair, can I just follow up with another question? So the 140 odd here, 44 or whatever here with your report obviously doesn't include the other departments that receive inquiries and they deal with them directly. So in terms of what we just talked about, overall costs, that also flows through to all the other various departments as well at a certain level.
Correct. Yeah. Even requests to consent for a copy of a resource consent or to our transport team for a copy of the bus timetable. Technically, they're all official information requests. I guess they get seen more as business as usual. And likewise, media requests are excluded from the data as well.
Thank you.
Very good. Anything else? Carmen.
I'd like to echo what Councillor Calvert said. It was a very good report. Thank you. Concise, easy to understand, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Just one thought I had, Peter, was that I was really impressed by the apparent efficiency with which the ORC handles Lagoima requests, and the percentage process within 20 working days seems to me to be remarkably high. Do you have any idea how that compares, our rate, with, say, the typical central government response rate?
I did have a quick look this morning just to see if I could locate some comparative times. We're not comparing complete apples with apples because what I've reported on is responses that were actually processed and completed. Some other councils report on data till they make their decision, which may not be when the information is supplied, but when they make a decision, yes, we're going to supply, or no, we're not. But we do look quite favourably over the one I did see this morning, where a period of, just for one thing, there it is. 14.8 working days was seen by an ombudsman as being a commendable achievement. So we are less than the 14.8 days. So we're doing okay.
We certainly are. That's great. Hillary?
Did you say we don't include the media ones in this?
No, a lot of the media requests which we get daily and you'll be aware of, they are excluded unless some do come through us, but it's very small percentage to the media requests. I would clarify media requests has been outside in general.
Are they, in your view, officially?
Every request to council for information is official information request.
I would have thought those should be in our stats because they're treated, that how we deal with them internally is one thing, but they are official information requests, aren't they?
Yes,
So
correct.
I would quite like to see them in those stats.
Can I just for clarification, Councillor? So the media requests are often a request for comment on an issue as opposed to a request for information. So are you?
No, I'm saying if it's for information, however it arrives, it's an official information act request, I think. It's officially one.
Yeah, if someone's requesting information which council holds.
Whereas if they're ringing to say, do you want to comment on that spill at Kaikorai Estuary or something, that's not asking for.
Yeah.
As my understanding.
Correct.
I might.
Yep. Your understanding is correct.
If they're if they are a question rather than asking for a comment, then they should be in these stats is what I'm saying. Could they be?
That would be no problem. We can work with the comms team to include that. Yeah.
Just since they belong sort of there. And I do see that they might sort of merge a wee bit.
Great.
We have the motion or the recommendation that we receive the report. Would somebody care to move that?
Happy to.
Seconded. I'll second. Any further discussion? Those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. And thank you very much, Peter, for the quality of that report and of your responsiveness to it.
Thank you.
That being the end of the agenda, I propose to declare the meeting closed and thank